Hello, my name is Jennifer Popchak Hakim, and I'm from the Office of Forensic Mental Health Services.
And I'm Marie Bailey. I work for the Healthcare Authority. I'm the Enhanced Peer Services Program Administrator. So welcome to Module 7. It's called Competency Restoration. It's part of the Intersection of Behavioral Health and the Law series. So again, this is Competency Restoration. We'll go over some things and hopefully you'll have some good takeaways from this.
So flip your manual to the Module 7.
Yep. So again, this is an overview, so we will not be covering everything in the manual. So you'll have some reading afterward. So what will you learn in this module? So we'll talk about what is competency restoration and the importance of it. We'll go over the competency restoration process, learn about some important things to do with involuntary medication, self orders and Harper hearings. We'll go over some of the state facilities that provide competency restoration services, and we'll go over some relevant state statutes.
All right, so competency restoration services. What is competency restoration? So this is individualized treatment tailored to deficits in competency, evidence-based treatment, multimodal experience, and the goal is to assist individuals in overcoming factors or barriers that limit their ability to understand the proceedings and aid the attorney in their defense. So if you remember back to the Dusky standard and the competency to stand trial module, it talked about the two pieces were to understand the proceedings against the individual and to be able to assist their attorney in their defense. So restoration services is looking at the barriers that are impeding that ability and treatment to overcome those.
And so I just like to add something. So this is not treatment in a sense of making somebody well in their mental health recovery. This is a service and a treatment to get somebody back to competency to stand trial.
Correct. This relates to competency to stand trial. So services typically include appropriate psychiatric medications when indicated, court procedures, so learning about what's going to happen in court, management of mental health symptoms, so how to manage those symptoms, and other supportive services.
And I also just wanted to mention, so if along this process, if somebody is deemed restored or unrestorable or has to go back to court for a hearing, there might be a time when somebody has to go in jail and wait for a hearing. So I just wanted to make sure that if you're working with somebody and supporting somebody, that might be something that you want to talk to them about. I have a little lived experience about that, going to court and ending up in jail when I wasn't expecting to, and it can be very traumatic. So knowing of these things and involving the people you work with.
Great.
Thanks.
All right, so why is competency restoration important? Washington law says that no incompetent person shall be tried, convicted, or sentenced for the commission of an offense so long as incapacity continues. That's pretty clear. That comes from 1077.050 and pretty clear. Things aren't going forward unless that person is deemed competent to stand trial. So what are the competency restoration facilities in Washington? Defendants are ordered into competency restoration services. Defendants that are ordered into are assessed through a centralized screening process to determine which location best matches their needs. There's many criteria that go into determining what best fits for an individual. State law gives DSHS placement discretion. Oops. So first we'll look at state hospitals. So these are inpatient facilities and provide inpatient for adults with serious mental illness or long-term mental illness referred by a behavioral health administrative service organization or an MCO, managed care organization, or civil or criminal court. So we have here in Washington, we have Eastern State Hospital near Spokane. It's actually a medical lake there. 317 beds. Western State Hospital here in Lakewood, on the west side, 800 beds, and they're adding beds in 2020. And if you remember back to Module 2, when we talked about True Blood and the True Blood elements, one of the elements was adding beds. So you can see that reflected here. Then we have Centers for Forensic Services at Western State Hospital. Again, that's Lakewood. And there's 8 units, about 30 clients each, serves adults committed under RCW 1077. Services are competency evaluations, restorations, and NGRI or not guilty by reason of insanity. So you can see it's a little more diverse, and that's it's on the Western State campus, but it's separate there, and that's a newer piece. So CFS also has community program, and that's the NGRI piece, and they serve clients that are ready for conditional release, providing case management services for a number of clients living in the community, and that's kind of a unique little piece we wanted to call out.
And it's really important. I mean, people get well in their community, and let's get them back there.
Yeah, that's great. So that was the state hospitals. Now we have residential treatment facilities, and they serve pretrial adults assessed low risk to harm self or others. And so we have 3 facilities here in Washington. We have Maple Lane, which is down in Lewis County near Centralia, and that's a 30-bed facility, and anticipated closure date of 2024. And again, you remember the True Blood, one of the True Blood elements was the ramp down of Maple Lane and Yakima, so you can see that reflected here, because they were not anticipated to be long-term facilities. Yakima has 24 beds, closure in 2021, and Fort Steilacoom has 30 beds.
And that's on the Western State Hospital campus.
Correct. That's the piece that we referred to a little bit earlier. FISCRIP, it's typically called FISCRIP. So if you hear that, that's what they're, Fort Steilacoom or FISCRIP, that's what it refers to. Okay, so then the next piece, so we got the state hospitals, then we have the RTFs, and now we have OCRP. So the state hospitals and the RTFs are the inpatient options, and the OCRP is the outpatient competency restoration program, which is the outpatient, the community option. So it provides competency restoration services to individuals deemed not competent to stand trial and appropriate for community treatment. So that's kind of the other piece. Individuals are assessed, and so then defendants can be from state hospital, jail, or the community, and they may be ordered to OCRP by the courts. The services are provided through contracted behavioral health agencies managed by HCA with Offlands. Again, this is another collaboration between HCA and Offlands, which excellent mix, I might add.
Yep.
So the goals are to reduce the number waiting for competency restoration services. And again, thinking back to True Blood, one of the goals was to reduce those numbers. And the least restrictive setting. And again, as Mo mentioned before,
people recover in their communities, yep. And that's where we want people. So, and again, the outpatient competency restoration program is a part of the True Blood settlement agreement, and services will begin in July of 2020. So let's go over a little bit of OCRP and some factors that are considered and reviewed to see if somebody is appropriate for OCRP?
Of course. Hop back to the previous slide. So if you see here, we say two parts here. Services for individuals deemed not competent to stand trial and appropriate for community treatment. So this chart basically goes over that appropriate for community treatment piece.
So if somebody's clinically appropriate, they're willing to adhere to medications, they're willing to abstain from drugs and alcohol or participate in a substance use program, and they have a need for restoration treatment in a secure facility. So that would go under appropriateness for civil commitment. So if they have a risk of elopement, which was a new word for me, which means just leaving the program unauthorized, likelihood of adhering to community-based services. So what are competency restoration facilities in Washington? So under this, we have the OCRP program. So this is based on these factors that and the information gathered by the navigators and clinical recommendations from the OFM's forensic admissions coordinator. So again, back in module 2, we introduced navigators. So navigators will make the non-clinical recommendation to the court. If the court approves, they'll order a conditional release. So as we went over before in the process chart for the forensic navigators, once somebody is ordered evaluation, they're assigned a navigator, and so the navigator will follow them through this whole process. So then the navigator will make a formal referral to OCRP and help transition the person into services. They'll again meet with the person on a regular basis and provide status information to the court. And as we referred to before, the forensic navigators are officers of the court, so they do report, information to the court. So the court won't issue an order for OCRP unless available appropriate OCRP or court places defendant under the control of an identified professional person. So they do need to have services when they go into OCRP. So how is the program delivered? So just like in an inpatient setting, they use the same curriculum or education. So it's called Breaking Barriers. And it uses individualized assessment and treatment services. So there's an intake assessment of specific barriers. They monitor the barriers. They adjust to interventions as needed. It's a standardized psychological and psychoeducational treatment, early referral if appropriate to evaluation. So it's standardized psychological and psychoeducational treatment modules that include courtroom knowledge and understanding. And remember, this is a service to get somebody prepared to go back to court and be competent to stand trial. This is not about treatment for mental health. So, and then there's an optimal symptom management, relaxation and coping skills with personal experience in court. You kind of need those. Effective communication with your attorneys and others in the court system. Right. So these are all important skills to learn to be able to be competent to stand trial.
So I just want to add real quick here, OCRP approaches may vary among individual defendants and within and across regions. So remember that these are in the community. So contractors may utilize individual and group in-person treatment, telehealth, and mobile treatment approaches, depending on the person's needs, the range of services, needs of the range of service area coverage, and the competency restoration period.
And also part of the OCRP program, they do have certified peer counselors on those teams. So if you are a certified peer counselor working on an OCRP team, you might be supporting somebody going through this. So how to complete the OCRP program? So if restoration is no longer appropriate in a community setting or the person is no longer clinically appropriate, they may be transferred to an inpatient restoration facility. So we want to keep people out in the community, but if that's not possible, they might be going back to an inpatient setting or going to an inpatient setting. So competency evaluation, a competency evaluation will be scheduled near the end of the restoration period or when they may have achieved competency. So they might achieve competency before the end of the period. The evaluation will be coordinated with the evaluator, the forensic navigator, the attorney, and the OCRP contractor. So if an individual is evaluated and they're still found not competent at the end of that restoration process, the court may order an additional period for restoration. And if the client at the end of the legal authority and is not likely restorable, the court may dismiss those charges and refer for civil commitment evaluation.
All right, so a couple pieces here about involuntary medications. And the first one that we're going to go over is Cell versus United States. You might have heard of a Cell hearing before. So in Cell versus United States court case, the court held that the Constitution allows the administration of psychiatric meds, involuntary medications, involuntary involuntarily to a criminal defendant with mental illness in order to render that defendant competent to stand trial for serious but nonviolent crimes. So that when you hear cell hearing, that's what it's referring to. So four conditions must be met in order to administer these medications for restoration. Important government interests are at stake, so it has to be something that the government needs a big deal for them to uh, be able to go forward with this. Medication is likely to render the defendant competent and unlikely to interfere with the defendant's ability to assist in their defense. So it doesn't do anybody any good if the medication renders the defendant competent, but then interferes with their ability to assist in their defense. That would be counterproductive.
So some medications have pretty negative side effects.
Right.
So medication needs to be appropriate.
So you can see that this is already, there's a lot of checks along the way here. Alternative, less intrusive treatments are unlikely to achieve the same result. So has this been vetted? Is this the last resort? Are other things that are less intrusive, have they been looked at? Have they been deemed not able to be used for one reason or the other? And then fourthly, the administration of drugs is medically appropriate.
Perfect. And so something to consider with a cell order. So they're not taken lightly. So how does somebody get referred for a cell order? That will generally happen by the treating psychiatrist or their ARNP, which is an advanced registered nurse practitioner. And so they'll initiate that process, but it's generally if somebody is not taking their medication. So if somebody hasn't taken their medication for 3 or more days, then they're likely to have this happen.
Yeah, then the cell
Yeah.
hearing. Okay, the second one that you may hear is a Harper hearing, and this has to do with the Washington versus Harper court case. And in this case, the court held that medication could be involuntarily administered to an inmate with a mental illness who posed a danger to themselves or others. So you can kind of see how that's different from the cell hearing. A danger to self or others, provided it is in the individual's best medical interest. So again, that medical interest piece. So this is for the purpose of restoring and maintaining competence to stand trial in the case of a serious offense. The court may authorize involuntary medication. A Harper hearing is specific to reducing dangerousness or grave disability. You can see that difference between this and a cell order. So in determining a serious offense in terms of competency restoration, some court considerations are, so is this a serious offense? The court may consider what was the bodily or emotional harm inflicted. So given this crime, how much was the harm that was inflicted? What impact did it have on community security? Is this person likely to negatively impact community security significantly? Are there additional charges pending? Is this an additional charge that this person has? Length of potential confinement and number of victims. So those are all things that are taken into consideration in determining, hey, and it kind of shows you the seriousness of involuntary medications. This is not taken lightly at all, and the situation has to be very serious for this to be considered. So that kind of helps illustrate that point.
Yeah, and some of the charges that this might be associated with are serious charges. So violent offenses, sex offenses, those involving firearms and dangerous weapons, domestic violence, and Class B felonies. So this isn't taken lightly.
Yeah, this can be a big thing.
So in your handout packet that you were emailed, there's a handout for assessment. So for the breaking barriers. So again, breaking barriers is that education program that people are given when they're either inpatient or in the outpatient competency restoration program to get them back to be able to participate effectively in their own defense. So there's an assessment there, and I would like you guys to complete that assessment as you would if you were the individual who is going to be requesting those services. So this will give you an opportunity to experience something on the other end. So if you can take some time after this and complete that assessment.
And this is the actual intake assessment that if you were an individual that was going to undergo competency restoration treatment, you would take this initial assessment to find out, hey, what barriers do I have? What things do I need to work on to be able to attain that competency?
So take some time to do that, and thank you for being here.
We'll see you in Module 7.
Perfect.
Bye.
Bye.